Hey, what's going on, gang? This is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel. And this week we are looking at the question of whether the Constitution demands that the government scrub all religion from the public square. In years past, if you were part of the town of Durham, New Hampshire, then Christmas time brought about the annual tree lighting ceremony, where Santa Claus made his official appearance by riding into town on one of the fire trucks. The lampposts on Main Street were decorated with Christmas wreaths, and to cap it all off, you have the official lighting of the Christmas tree. Well, not anymore, kids. This year, while he will be present, Santa Claus will not make his grand entrance on a fire truck. No Christmas wreaths will grace Main Street, and the annual tree lighting ceremony, the entire event itself, has been renamed the Frost Fest. The reason for these changes? A couple of people complained. According to Councilwoman Sally Tobias, quote, "There were a couple of people that did express some concerns about how they were being included." In a town of 14,638 people, because a couple of people complained about the overtly religious nature of these festivities, the entire thing was changed to accommodate these grinches. And I don't say that lightly. These people are grinches. Again, to quote Tobias. There was another private citizen that came forward and said that he had always had a problem with the Christmas tree, as he called it. Now, the first question to pop into my head after reading this story is, what overtly religious symbolism was so offensive to Durham's resident Scrooges? Not to say that there was no religious symbolism in these festivities. Santa Claus, for example, is the Anglicization of Sinterklaas, which is Dutch for Saint Nicholas, who was a 4th century AD Bishop of Myra in what is now modern-day Turkey. Christmas wreaths are, quote, "a Christian symbol for Christ's suffering and ultimate triumph over death," unquote, according to a Christmas 1988 article from the New York Times. Evergreens were symbols of renewed life in the old Germanic religions, and when Christian missionaries came in, the trees were baptized to become symbols of Christ. Even the lights that we put on the Christmas tree have a religious connotation to them because, according to the tradition, after looking at the stars on a winter evening, Martin Luther went home and put candles on his Christmas tree, both to symbolize the Christmas star as well as Jesus as the light of the world. But were the people of Durham aware of this symbolism? Not to boast or anything, but most people just don't know about this. For them, Santa Claus, trees, wreaths, lights, they don't have any religious connotation. They're just traditions that you do if you acknowledge Christmas in any way. The only reason why I'm aware of this symbolism is because I'm a colossal nerd and I read all the time. So again, what symbolism were these Grinches offended about? More than that, what symbolism was so overtly, so in-your-face religious that these people felt that they were being excluded from their community and their town life? And this leads to another point, this whole idea of being included in your community life. Was anyone in Durham being deprived of their natural and or civil rights? No. Was anyone being coerced and forced to attend the annual tree lighting ceremony? No. Did Durham establish an official religion for the town and require everyone to attend services every Sunday? No. All that was happening was a New England town celebrating Christmas in a state where, even today, the majority of the population still identifies as Christian, according to Pew, in what could be argued was a very secular manner. There were no nativities, no baby Jesuses, no angel choirs, no stars, etc., etc. A community being inclusive doesn't mean that they do things your way 100% of the time. Being inclusive doesn't mean that you are 100% at ease when you are in society. A community that is inclusive is a community that is just. Since, as Alexander Hamilton put it in the Federalist Papers, justice is the end of government. And, as our friend Aristotle said, justice is giving to each person what is due to him. And sorry to say this to Durham's resident Scrooges, but justice does not demand that you be 100% at ease in public all the time. In fact, you want to know the real people who have been excluded in all of this? The 14,636 people who didn't have a problem with the annual tree lighting ceremony. Think about this. Because two people complained to the city council. The annual tree lighting ceremony was changed so substantially, it's no longer the tradition that the town has had. Instead of being a blow for inclusivity, this is actually a demonstration of small-time tyranny where, again, two people, a minuscule minority, dictated to Durham what it could and could not do. But Nate, why would Durham just roll over on its back and bare its throat to these people? I'm going to guess that they were afraid of what would happen to them if they didn't comply. This isn't the first time that we've seen this movie. For years now, towns have been sued because of their Christmas displays. To give just a few examples. In 2003, the ACLU of Rhode Island sued the town of Cranston for their life-sized nativity and menorah, which were set up in front of City Hall. In 2014, the town of Jay, Wisconsin ended its 40-plus year tradition of having a nativity in front of City Hall when Andrew Siddell, an attorney for the Freedom from Religious Foundation, remember those guys? Told the town it was illegal because it was an endorsement of religion. Jay complied when the city council realized that fighting the FFRF in court could cost them up to $100,000. Just last year, in 2018, the town of Woodland, Washington ended its tradition of having a public nativity set for Christmas when several people complained that it was unconstitutional. The theme connecting all of these stories together is the idea that religion has absolutely no place in the public square, especially if the local government is involved in any way, shape, or form, because these displays of religion obviously violate the wall of separation between church and state, which was set up with the First Amendment. Now, if you remember from a few weeks back, you know that the wall of separation between church and state was not an invention of Thomas Jefferson or even of the American Revolution. Instead, it was an idea from the early days of Christianity, and it was invented not to protect the government from religion, but to protect religion from the government. Furthermore, as the First Amendment was originally written and intended, the wall of separation only affected the federal government. It prevented the federal government from putting its nose in the affairs of religion, and it kept it from appointing one particular religion, or more likely one particular denomination, and making it the official national religion of the United States. Again, like the Church of England is for the UK. This all changed in 1947 with the Supreme Court case Everson versus Board of Education. In that decision, the Supreme Court decreed that the wall of separation affected not just the federal government, but the state and local governments as well. Furthermore, the court decreed that the wall of separation was high and impregnable. So high and impregnable, in fact, that the government couldn't just be neutral between denominations, or heck, even just between religions, as had originally been intended. No. The government had to be neutral between religion and irreligion, between religion and atheism. The court reinforced this idea in 1989 with the case County of Allegheny versus ACLU, which coincidentally actually dealt with a public nativity display set. In that decision, the 5-justice majority decided, quote, "Although the government may acknowledge Christmas as a cultural phenomena, it may not observe it as a Christian holy day by suggesting that people praise God for the birth of Jesus." Justice Blackmun, the court's majority opinion writer, wrote that government on any level violates the wall of separation when its actions could be seen by a reasonable observer as endorsing a religion, which would make non-believers feel like political outsiders in their communities. And since the idea of the reasonable observer was created out of whole cloth for this decision specifically, it really has no substance or weight behind it, which means, shazam! Any public display of religion in the public square can be seen as unconstitutional. Okay, how do I deal tactfully with this?
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Yeah, that's good. We'll go with that. In the court's dissenting opinion to the Allegheny case, written by Justices Kennedy, Rehnquist, Scalia, and White, the justices called bollocks on this whole interpretation. They first pointed out, like we did actually at the very beginning of the video, that just having a nativity display in the public square, heck, having any sort of religious symbolism in the public square does not excommunicate people from their political societies because, quote, "Passerbys who disagree with the message conveyed by these displays are free to ignore them, or even to turn their backs, just as they are free to do when they disagree with any other form of government speech. There is no realistic risk that the display represents an effort to proselytize or otherwise the first step down the road to an establishment of religion. Furthermore, the dissenting justices pointed out that if government is actually forbidden from acknowledging anything religious, it ends up discriminating against its own people, saying, quote, "Government policies of accommodation, acknowledgement, and support for religion are an accepted part of our political and cultural heritage, and the Establishment Clause permits government some latitude in recognizing the central role of religion in society. Any approach less sensitive to our heritage would border on latent hostility to religion, as it would require government in all its multifaceted roles to acknowledge only the secular, to the exclusion, and so to the detriment of the religious." And when the dissenting justices said that this idea that government has to remain completely neutral in matters of religion in the public square was contrary to our history and our culture, they were right on the money. During the Revolution, the Continental Congress issued public days of fasting and prayer, as well as public days of Thanksgiving, traditions that were continued by Presidents Washington and John Adams. In 1785, to organize the Northwest Territory, Congress passed the Northwest Ordinance, which read in part, quote, "Religion, morality, and knowledge, being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged." In other words, public education, part of the local governments, were told to actively teach and promote religion and morality for the good of the people and for their communities. Furthermore, many states had established churches. They had official religions for themselves even after the Constitution was passed. Massachusetts was the last state to actually disestablish religion in 1833, 42 years after the First Amendment was passed. The general atmosphere mentality of the country reinforced this arrangement. In his Thoughts on Government, written in 1776, John Adams said that the end of government was the happiness of the people, specifying in the very next line that true happiness only comes from virtue. And just take a wild, crazy guess as to where virtue came from. Religion!
You just won the solid gold Cupid doll.
The father of our country himself, George Washington, reinforced this idea in his farewell address when he said, quote, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable support. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and cherish them." Now, not only is this idea that there can be absolutely nothing religious in the public square unconstitutional and ahistorical, it's also dangerous. First of all, because, as we said earlier, since reasonable observer was never adequately defined by the Supreme Court, anyone can say that anything is an endorsement of religion, and especially in our hypersensitive culture, it will be. Don't believe me? You might not have heard about Santagate. A man named Christian Schaefer complained to Microsoft because, quote, "The Santa hat on V-Code, insiders, and pushing of religion is very offensive to me. Pushing religious symbols as part of a product update is completely unacceptable. Please remove it immediately and make it your top priority. To me, this is almost equally offensive as a swastika." You heard that right, gang. Not only did a man say that a Santa hat icon that Microsoft included in one of its product updates was pushing Christianity upon him egregiously, but he also said that that Santa hat icon was the equivalent of a swastika, which is honestly a first. I mean, I've heard people say that Santa Claus is a socialist and or a communist, but this is the first time that I've heard someone actually argue that he's a fascist. First time for everything, I guess. And what's even more insane, Microsoft actually listened to him. Now, what this pushing out of anything and everything that could even remotely be seen as religious or having a religious connotation does is it creates a vacuum. And the thing about vacuums is that nature abhors them. We've known that since the time of our boy Aristotle. But it's true not just for science, but also for human beings. We are rational creatures, yes, but we are also religious creatures. Every culture and civilization from the very beginning of history has had religion of some sort. Even in synthetically created atheistic societies like the former USSR, there was religion of a sort, because in a culture where God was proclaimed to be dead, the state became God, holding out the promise of turning oppressed, impoverished people into the new Soviet man or woman. The void had to be filled back then, and the void has to be filled now in 2019 America. To give one example, Satanism is on the rise, with statues of Baphomet being placed outside of city halls in Arkansas and in Illinois. This October, naval midshipmen at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, were actually given rooms to have satanic services. To give another example, environmentalism has morphed from a desire to actually preserve and protect the environment to a movement that sees nature as, for all intents and purposes, a god. We have movements like ecosexualism, which believes that the world can only be saved by people literally having sex with it. Groups like Extinction Rebellion have as their stated purpose the overthrow of governments and their replacement with citizen assemblies, because apparently this is the only way that's going to stop climate change. Or groups like Birth Strike, which decree that couples can no longer have children, because more people means that the world is going to burn faster. Religion, whether we like it or not, whether we're conscious of it or not, actively molds societies and cultures. And when religion is pushed away to the periphery, when it's actively chased out of the public square, and something else inevitably comes to fill in that vacuum, the culture and the society, its ideas, its norms, its values, its principles, they are going to change. And chances are, they're not going to be as good as what we had before. But what say you? Are we in danger of becoming a Soviet-style society from the exclusion of religion from the public square? Or is this just what needs to happen in a pluralistic society? As always, let me know your thoughts, ideas, and opinions in the comment section below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. As always, if you liked the video, whether you agreed with me or not, don't forget to show your support by leaving a comment, giving it a like, and sharing it on social media. And if you liked the videos about the culture, politics, and religion, but from a different POV, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to ring that bell for notifications so that you will always know when I put new videos out like this every Tuesday, videos you're not going to want to miss. As always, thank you for watching, for giving me a bit of your day. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to my channel. I appreciate you all. And I will see you all again here next week, gang, where we will close out the year here on top of the stone. Ciao, and have a Merry Christmas.